Science, they don't even believe there's any objective method of scientific inquiry, and there is. Language, even they see that as a socially engineered construct, and social progress. Accordingly, postmodern thought is broadly categorized by tendencies toward pluralism, that things could be two contradictory things simultaneously, irreverence, meaning that there's nothing that is sacred or holy or of value that even transcends the human being, solipsism, the idea that there's no objective truth or objective reality, epistemological relativism, that means there's no known way of developing a methodology to understand what is true and real. That's the investigation of reality as epistemology. And of course, moral relativism, the idea that there's no such thing as objective right or wrong. This is a mental illness and an occult belief system. And it's rife throughout, especially communism, but was probably also very present in Nazi society. And then finally, the last ideology that constitutes cult belief is millenarianism. Not a commonly known term, but this is the belief by a religious, social, or political group or movement in a coming fundamental transformation of society, after which all things will be changed. Millenarianism exists in various cultures and religions worldwide with various interpretations of what actually constitutes a so-called societal transformation. Many of the occultists and occult organizations that we'll be talking about distinctly held a millenarianist worldview. And we'll talk about that later. So now let's explore the first major section here, the dark occult origins of Nazism. To really understand where Nazism developed from and really was perverted out of older systems of religion and belief, you really have to go back to ancient Germanic paganism, because that's what a lot of the occultists based a lot of their folklore upon. Okay? And it is not to say that this is all evil. Please do not make that mistake into me thinking everything I show you here today means that it's evil. Okay? You have to have a much more evolved viewpoint of this and understand there's a lot of distortion and perversion that went into taking some of these older ancient beliefs and twisting them to suit the aims that the occultists wanted to use them for. Okay? So Germanic paganism could be best described as the pre-Christian polytheistic religious beliefs, traditions, and practices of German-speaking peoples in the regions of Scandinavia, Germany, of course, the British Isles, and other parts of Europe. While these beliefs and practices did vary greatly in different geographical regions of Europe and throughout the world, many commonalities of these beliefs can be identified, and we'll look at some of their commonalities. So again, if you're really going to do a long cultural study and a historical framing of where Nazism came from, you have to go back and look at the ancient Germanic religions of Germanic paganism. The commonalities shared by these different regional variations include myths regarding the creation and destruction of the world, a general belief in an afterlife, and a wide pantheon of gods, goddesses, and supernatural beings. Themes of astrotheology, which I talk a lot about in my work on the occult, also figured heavily into these religious traditions, evidenced specifically by the names of some of its most important deities. So you could see astrotheological themes coming through in ancient Germanic paganism. In this graphic here, depicting some of their gods in Germanic paganism, you have the deities Sunna, Mona, Tiu, Woden, Thonor, Freya, and Saiter, representing the bodies of our solar system, the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, and the 7 days of the week, very readily seen in their names, Sunna, sun, Mona, moon, Tiu, Tuesday, Woden, Wednesday, or Mona, Monday, Sunna, Sunday, Woden, Wednesday, Thunor, Thursday, or Thor, Freya, Friday, and of course Seter, Saturday. Very blatantly obvious in the names of the week. So this is all astrotheology. It's very much covered in my podcast series. It's very much covered in my Demystifying the Occult presentation. Obviously, that's another presentation unto itself to study astrotheology, but it's very interesting how all of those associations take place within these ancient religious views in Germanic paganism. There was a Germanic occult revival in the late 19th and early 20th centuries that really paved the way for the coming on of the ideologies that led to the Third Reich. The late 19th and early 20th centuries saw a general occult revival on the European continent, specifically the regions including Germany and Austria. Among the occult traditions that influenced this occult revival were astrology, runes or runology, Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, Theosophy, and Anthroposophy. So I want to talk briefly about the last two here, because we'll get into runes a little bit, we'll get into Freemasonry a bit when we talk about some of the other secret societies later. But Theosophy and Anthroposophy, we really have to understand them in a framework that of distortion by the dark occultists. All of these ideologies are not evil systems. People have to understand they just contained occult knowledge, and these dark occultists or sorcerers come along and they twist them and pervert them and use them for their own ends. So once again, it's very important to understand some of the people that led to this occult revival, right, which did pave the way for some of these dark occultists to come along and twist and pervert those ideologies. They themselves were teaching a pure form of some of these occult traditions and should not be blamed for the rise of Nazism. Okay? So the first and foremost of these is Theosophy. And I could tell you from personal experience, this is a very rich occult tradition with phenomenal values, ideas, and exploration. I've attended Theosophical lodges myself, engaged in discussions with them. You have to see this tradition from the pure perspective that it is intended to be seen from, and not fall into the ideology that, Theosophy paved the way for Nazism. It was twisted and distorted by dark occultists. That's all they ever do. They just take the pure form, they twist and pervert it, they give it to people, and then it's off to the races. Okay? So, Theosophy, from the Greek nouns theos, meaning God or divinity, and sophos, meaning wisdom, thus literally it means divine wisdom, or the wisdom of the divine. Theosophy is a system of esoteric philosophy, again, intended for initiates, not intended for people on the outside who don't have a lot of knowledge on these topics. It's taught to an initiated group. Esoteric philosophy, which investigates and seeks direct knowledge of the mysteries of being and nature, or in other words, natural law, or the occult. Although it is an ancient philosophy, Theosophy was popularized by a 19th century occultist named Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, who founded the Theosophical Society and wrote many famous works of occult teaching. The Theosophical Society's mantra is, there is no religion higher than truth. If you're going to devote your life to the understanding of something, you should try to pursue truth. The truth about the nature of reality, the truth about the nature of human beings. And there's nothing higher than that path. You don't strive to just arrive at dogma and belief and just accept. You pursue the truth through true investigative processes until you arrive at it. And it is knowable. It's discoverable. It's knowable. The creator of the universe didn't make the universe to tantalize us with its unknowability. You know, I can't believe how many people think we can't arrive at a basic understanding of things, about how things really work. Of course we can. It's just hard work to do that. So most people just give up and say, oh, I'll never understand that. Then they want to try to tell other people, you can never understand it. No, truth is knowable. It's not some impossible to reach objective. The way things work in our reality can be discovered and known. It's just hard work to arrive at that. And that's what they're basically telling people, that you have to really put in the work. The main tenets of theosophy as taught by Blavatsky are the same tenets found in many other occult traditions. Chief among these is the belief of the presence of what Blavatsky called a divine spark within every person, which with the proper discipline and training can lead to spiritual illumination or enlightenment. Theosophy's adherents consider themselves searchers after truth, who are dissatisfied with the world and are dissenters of the creeds of organized religion. They just believe that as religious dogma taught to people to try to control their minds. Theosophists admit the existence of a God, but not necessarily of a personal God, not of a humanistic God, right? To most theosophists, God is nature and spiritual law itself. It is the laws of creation that are operating all around us. That's God to the theosophist. It's the law of nature. Blavatsky also taught that humanity has had many past incarnations or variations on Earth, which she called root races. This is a key concept here because Nazis really perverted this and distorted it. Root races were never meant to be understood as genetic races in theosophical teaching, but rather as different types of civilizations that attained different levels of consciousness. Blavatsky called the root race, which she claimed was destined to transcend materialist darkness and ascend into the light of knowledge and become enlightened, as the Aryan race. So she used the term Aryan to describe the race that would eventually transcend materialism and truly become an enlightened species. I'm sorry, I have to step back there. The root of the word Aryan is the word Ari in many different ancient languages. Ari, A-R-I, the basic transliteration, regardless of what language we're talking about, means in various ancient languages, it translates to best, superior, godlike, sunlike, light, or enlightened. So Aryan did not mean those with blonde hair and blue eyes, okay? In the context that Blavatsky was teaching in theosophy, Aryan referred to an enlightened people who had gained an understanding about the human psyche and the laws of nature, the knowledge of the occult, and became enlightened. Not those with light skin, hair, and eyes. A common misperception, okay? The Nazis and their predecessors, who we're going to talk about, distorted this original meaning of Aryan, taught in theosophy, into their idea of a genetically superior race of people. Okay? It has to be clearly kept in mind and understood that the Nazis were distorting teachings of theosophy. Blavatsky was not a racist. Blavatsky was teaching people about root races that attained levels of consciousness. The concept of root races was meant to be understood in alignment with what is known as the Hermetic principle of rhythm, which explains that there is a cyclical quality or wave-like progression to time, which imparts lessons and influences consciousness to produce certain outcomes. Blavatsky taught, that if humanity is unable to raise their aggregate consciousness to a high enough level of awareness during the recurrence of such wave cycles of time, that humanity may then experience setbacks in their evolutionary progression as a species in the form of semi-extinction level events or cataclysms, which necessitate a so-called reset of humanity from a subsequent root race.